Welcome back to One Comic Book Day, where we continue our exploration of the history of Superman with Adventure Comics 152, Superboy Hunts For A Job. This is like the third version I can think of where we've done a version of Clark's first meeting with his future boss, Perry White. Not in Superboy. The other two I can think of were definitely Superman stories. One where it went back and told the first part of the story of the first Superman story in Action Comics #1, where essentially like how he ended up with the woman he was jumping across the field with to stop the execution of a wrongly convicted woman. And the other one sort of tells a story about Clark being young and meeting Perry for the first time and wanting to be a reporter. But those are like his first two times meeting Perry. We've also had many different stories about how he got his job, but it wasn't particularly clear if that was his first time meeting Perry. So this is the third version, unless there was a fourth version. I could possibly be forgetting one. And yeah, it's different from the others. They're all pretty different. They're not just like different in the way we retell his origin story with some of the stuff staying consistent with some alterations. No, this is very different from that. It's also a little strange because the comic Superboy and Adventure Comics has been setting up the idea that Clark is a teenage school reporter. This kind of ignores that idea, I guess, because none of this is really continuity. Like, there's no thought of any of these stories happening one after each other. This could explain how he gets into reporting if we're trying to make a bit of continuity here. Essentially, there is a contest, a composition, I believe they describe it as, sort of like an essay contest about writing what you want to be when you grow up. And Clark doesn't know what he wants to be. There is actually a pretty good understanding in the story for something that Marvel will definitely explore more in the future, of why it's hard for a superhero to keep their job if they have to constantly rush off and save people. You need kind of a special kind of job to be able to do that. So Clark, to figure out what he wants to do, ends up having 3 jobs because all these stories sort of fit into 3 things happening. It's just the structure, and most of the time it's kind of monotonous to read. But I don't dislike this one. Clark will work at a swanky restaurant as a waiter, an ice cream man, the type of ice cream man who pushes the cart and not a truck. Not sure they existed yet. They probably did. And working on a cruise ship, essentially. All 3 of these jobs get messed up by the fact that something happens, either a crime or an event that he has to get away from, which ruins his job. Though technically, in the cruise, he doesn't actually ruin his job in any way. He just kind of realizes that he's not meant for this. But he has to do something heroic, ruining whatever this job is, pretty much putting him in a melancholy mood, as he can't seem to figure out what he'll be right for. But every single time something happens, a reporter, Perry White, his future boss or editor-in-chief of the Daily Planet, shows up to report on it. Though, seemingly not the best reporter, he can't seem to remember who Clark is, even though he runs into him 3 times in, 3 days? A week? Never recognizes him, even though he talks to him about what's happening there. Clark, after realizing that Perry has shown up at every single one of his jobs, realizes that, hey, a reporter shows up to these events, that would be perfect for me to do, writes it, and wins the contest, where Perry White happens to be the person who presents him with his certificate. This being more or less the first time they meet. Not technically the first time they meet. They met the first time when he was being a waiter. But this is the time Perry will remember him. And that is essentially why Clark became a reporter, because reporters really easily at that time would be the ones getting the updates to crimes and events happening. It would be the perfect little community area for him to find out about anything that might need his attention. It's a good job for that. That's why a lot of superheroes worked in journalism in some way, from Spider-Man being a photojournalist to investigative reporters. So what I'm going to give this story credit for not being all that fun, which is usually what I ask for, is having a bit of a story that is self-aware. There was a little more thought put into the story of Clark thinking about what he can possibly do, and even him being a little upset that it's very clear that he won't be able to do whatever he wants in the future. There is thought into the fact that I'm Superboy, but eventually Superman. How can I meet these interests into one, which ends up being reporting? And that is a very good explanation. Most of these stories don't have a lot of thought or character development in them, and this feels like at least Superboy being self-aware enough. So I'll give it credit for that. I actually do like this story, even with its 3 random events happening and them not kind of going together and feeling like filler for most of the story. You've heard me complain about this multiple times, so many times at this point. Okay, that is it from Adventure Comics 152, Superboy Hunts for a Job. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications when a new video goes up. I do this Monday through Friday, but Friday is Bat Friday, where I cover a Batman story, either Detective Comics or Batman. And until next time, let's ponder the question, whatever did happen to the boy of tomorrow? And do you think, because Perry seems to have some sort of face blindness when it comes to Clark, we can just throw in all these different versions of the first time Perry met Clark? Because it's just like Perry never remembers who this guy is. Like he's Mr. Burns to Clark's Homer. Okay, have a great day.